On the edge of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of most civilizations, there was a planet in trouble. Its skies were dark with storms that never ended, and its lands cracked and twisted from endless heat. The planet's once great cities now stood in silence, broken and abandoned in places where families had once lived. The air was thick and hard to breathe, and water was scarce. Every day felt like a struggle to survive. The inhabitants of this world were intelligent and strong, but their strength could not stop the disasters that kept coming. They were not alone in their suffering. They knew other civilizations existed in the galaxy, beings who might offer help. So they tried. They sent messages through the stars calling out for help, begging someone, anyone, to respond. For years, the aliens broadcasted their distress. Their signals traveled across light years, passing through systems filled with busy worlds and thriving species. They spoke of floods that swept away entire cities, of scorching winds that burned crops, of illnesses that spread faster than anyone could cure. They sent detailed maps, charts, and plans for survival, hoping someone would notice, but nobody answered. The silence was unbearable. Every day their hope dwindled just a little more. They started to fear that no one would ever come. Some of the younger ones, who had never known a time when the planet was safe, grew up thinking that their world was cursed. They wandered the broken streets, staring at the empty buildings, asking questions no one could answer. Why had no one come? Why had the galaxy turned its back? Among the elders and leaders, the pain was even deeper. They had lived through better times. They had seen their world full of life, laughter, and music. Now they watched helplessly as everything crumbled. Each day they held council after council trying to figure out a plan, but every idea seemed hopeless. Supplies were running low, and no new ships or resources could arrive without help from outside. In private, some of the leaders cried. They had spent their lives building their civilization, teaching the young, exploring the stars, and now it all seemed destined to vanish. The desperation was not just about survival. It was about the loss of everything they had worked for, everything they had dreamed of. They feared that soon their children and grandchildren would know only suffering. The aliens tried to stay busy. Scientists worked day and night to find ways to clean water, to stabilize the crumbling buildings, to make food grow in dying soil. Engineers repaired machines with parts that were barely functional. Even the children helped, learning skills from adults so that the work could continue. But no matter how hard they tried, the disasters kept coming. They held on to one fragile hope. Maybe, just maybe, someone in the galaxy would hear them. Sometimes, when a distant signal reached their instruments, their hearts leapt, only to fall when it turned out to be a routine message from faraway travelers who had no interest in stopping to help. Their hopes rose and fell like the tides of a stormy sea, exhausting everyone emotionally. The elders often gathered to speak quietly among themselves. They remembered stories of other worlds that had come to each other's aid in times of crisis. They remembered legends of civilizations that had built alliances and friendships across star systems. But their memories also reminded them that their planet was known as dangerous. It was called a death world by those who had heard of its harsh conditions. Few were willing to risk themselves for a place that could destroy anyone who dared to land. The younger aliens did not understand why nobody helped. They could not understand why the galaxy, so vast and full of life, could be so indifferent. They asked the older ones, and the elders could only shake their heads. We do not know, they admitted. We can only keep trying, and so they tried. Again and again they sent out messages, using all the energy they had left. Their voices went into the void, carried by light and radio waves, reaching countless worlds yet touching no hearts. Every message ended the same way, with silence. The isolation became unbearable. Families huddled together in their homes, listening to the wind scream across the barren lands, wondering if this would be the night that disaster would finally take them all. Schools and libraries closed because there was no safety, no energy, and no hope that the young could learn when survival itself was so uncertain. But even in the darkness, small acts of courage continued. Some families worked together to share food. Some communities patched together buildings, reinforcing walls against storms. Some scientists worked tirelessly to repair broken water systems. Every small effort was an act of defiance against despair, a statement that they would not give up, even if the galaxy had already given up on them. In one city, the central tower, once a beacon of hope and knowledge, stood like a monument to what had been lost. Its lights barely worked, flickering in the dark as if uncertain whether to continue shining. From this tower, the aliens sent their strongest signals, their loudest pleas. They created messages filled with not just data but with emotion, fear, hope, and the desperate need for connection. These were not messages of logic alone. They were cries from the heart. Some nights, when the twin moons rose over the cracked lands, the oldest elders would sit outside the tower. They would stare at the stars, imagining who might be listening. Perhaps a civilization far away and a system they had never seen might finally hear them. They whispered to the stars, telling stories of their people, of what they had lost and of what they hoped to save. It was their last act of hope, carried out in the quiet, under the indifferent gaze of the universe. And then, one evening, as another storm rolled across the horizon, a faint trace appeared on their instruments. It was almost too weak to detect, a tiny ripple in the vast expanse of space. The aliens leaned in, hearts racing. Could it be? Could someone finally be responding? Their sensors strained, trying to follow the signal, but it was unlike anything they had seen. It was not from a nearby system, and it did not behave like the signals of the civilizations that had ignored them for so long. They sent a message back, trembling with hope, asking who it was. And then silence again, for at least that's what it seemed at first. For the first time in years, there was a sense of possibility, a spark of hope that maybe they were not completely alone. They did not yet know who was out there, or if this signal would bring salvation or more disappointment. But in that moment, the aliens felt their spirits lift slightly. Maybe, just maybe, someone would finally answer their call. And somewhere across the galaxy, a group of humans would soon be receiving signals from a world in crisis. Humans who were known for surviving the impossible, for exploring the deadliest places, for answering calls that others would ignore. Humans who would not see the planet as a death world to avoid, but as a challenge to face no matter the danger. But that story was still ahead. For now the aliens waited, hearts trembling between fear and hope, wondering if the silence would ever end. The days on the dying planet grew longer and heavier. The storms had become more violent, and the winds carried dust that made it hard to see even a few steps ahead. The temperature swung wildly, burning during the day and freezing at night. Every step outside was a risk. Yet, life continued because for the aliens, giving up was not an option. The people moved cautiously through their ruined cities. Buildings that had once touched the sky were now broken shells, leaning dangerously to one side. Streets were filled with debris, and the few vehicles that still worked were patched together with whatever could be found. Despite the danger, the aliens continued their routines. They went out to gather water from hidden reservoirs, repaired small machines that filtered air, and planted food in tiny protected plots. Every effort was a fight against the planet itself. Inside their homes, families struggled to keep hope alive. Parents taught their children practical skills, how to repair simple machines, how to purify water, how to navigate the dangerous terrain. But they also tried to teach them stories of the past, stories of a world that had been beautiful, full of music, laughter, and open skies. These stories were bittersweet. They reminded the children of what had been lost, but also gave them a reason to survive, a reason to believe that one day things could be better. Even as they worked, fear was always close. Every alien knew that one mistake could cost a life. A sudden storm could sweep someone away. A weak wall could collapse. A failed machine could cut off vital water or electricity. They learned to move carefully, to anticipate danger, and to respect the unpredictable planet they called home. Isolation weighed heavily on them. Every time they sent a message into space hoping for help, they waited anxiously for a response. And every time there was nothing. Silence stretched on for years, and the feeling of being forgotten became a constant companion. The elders would often sit together in quiet rooms, staring at the fading lights of their cities, wondering if anyone in the galaxy even cared. Some younger aliens grew angry at the silence. They asked why other worlds ignored their calls, why no one risked themselves to help a civilization in need. They wanted action, not words. They wanted someone to arrive to rescue them, to prove that the universe still had compassion. Their questions often went unanswered, because even the elders did not have answers. They only had memories and hope, fragile and thin as the cracks in their streets. Desperation sometimes led to arguments. Some communities debated whether to try leaving the planet using old ships that were barely functional. Others thought it was too dangerous. The council meetings were tense, filled with frustration, fear, and hopelessness. But every plan to leave required resources they no longer had. Every idea to survive seemed to be blocked by the harsh reality of their environment. Yet, even in despair, the aliens found ways to care for one another. They shared food and water, repaired each other's shelters, and comforted families who had lost loved ones. Acts of kindness became their lifeline. When one family's home collapsed in a storm, neighbors immediately came to help rebuild it using hands raw from work, but hearts willing to protect each other. These small acts were quiet defiance against the growing despair, a reminder that even in the darkest times, solidarity could survive. At night, the sky was a strange, unsettling color, lit by distant stars that seemed far too cold to care. But some of the younger aliens would still lie outside, staring up, imagining other civilizations in those distant lights. They wondered if anyone out there could hear them, if anyone had seen the messages they sent year after year. They whispered wishes into the void, half hope, half prayer, that someone, anyone, would come. Meanwhile, the planet continued to fight back. Floods would wash away the small gardens the aliens tended. Fires would break out in abandoned sections of the cities. Strange illnesses spread quickly, leaving the community struggling to keep everyone healthy. Medical supplies were almost gone, and the scientists worked tirelessly to create new treatments from what little resources remained. The situation seemed hopeless at times, but they never stopped trying. Communication remained a fragile thread. Each new attempt to send a message into the galaxy was a moment of hope and fear. Some messages carried technical data about how to survive. Some carried personal pleas, stories of families, dreams, and lives at risk. Every message was an effort to reach beyond themselves, to connect with someone who might care. Every failed message deepened the despair, but still they tried. The aliens also faced internal conflict. Fear and stress sometimes caused them to argue over limited resources. Some people wanted to hoard food or water, thinking it might save their own families. Others argued that sharing was the only way to survive together. These debates were heated, emotional, and often left lingering tension. Yet in the end, the instinct to help one another usually won. Cooperation was a survival skill, as much as building shelters or finding water. In the midst of all this struggle, the scientists made small discoveries. They found ways to purify water more efficiently, to grow food in harsh conditions, and to strengthen buildings against storms. These were small victories, but in a world so full of disaster, they meant everything. They reminded the aliens that survival was still possible, even if the universe seemed determined to ignore them. Some nights, the elders would gather their children and grandchildren around a small fire. They spoke of hope, of courage, and of the worlds beyond their own. They explained that even if help did not come, they must continue to care for each other. They must continue to live, to work, and to find moments of happiness in a life that was otherwise full of struggle. These stories became lessons, a form of quiet resilience. But hope was a fragile thing. The longer the silence from the galaxy lasted, the harder it became to hold on to it. Many wondered if they would ever see another civilization, if anyone would answer their cries. The feeling of being abandoned was heavy and constant. It shaped how they thought, how they acted, and how they dreamed. Fear of the future was a shadow that followed them everywhere, even in moments of rest. Yet through all the fear, despair, and isolation, life continued. Children laughed when they could, even in small bursts. Communities celebrated small successes: a repaired water system, a growing garden, a storm that passed without destroying homes. These small victories became symbols of hope, showing that survival was still possible, that the world was not entirely lost. And then, one quiet evening, something unusual happened. A new signal appeared on their instruments. It was faint, almost impossible to detect at first, but it was there, and it was different from anything they had seen before. The aliens leaned in, hearts racing. Could this finally be someone responding? Could the galaxy have finally heard them? The scientists worked quickly to understand the signal. It was unlike any known message from other civilizations. It seemed deliberate, organized, and advanced. The aliens exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to hope or fear that this might be a trick, a mistake, or something dangerous. Yet the tiny spark of possibility was enough to revive a sense of anticipation that had not been felt in years. Families gathered around the instruments, waiting. The elders held their breath. Children pressed close, sensing the tension and the hope in the room. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move, and as the faint signal repeated, a new thought spread among them. Maybe this time, help was coming. Maybe this time someone would finally answer their call. It was a small spark, but in a world that had almost forgotten what hope felt like, even a spark could light a fire. Far across the galaxy on a small blue planet, humans were busy with their daily lives. Cities buzzed with energy, machines hummed, and people went about their work, unaware that somewhere far beyond the stars a civilization was struggling to survive. But deep in the laboratories of Earth, a group of scientists was paying attention to signals from space. Signals most people would never notice. The signals were faint, strange, and difficult to interpret. They did not come from any known satellite or probe, and they did not match anything the humans had recorded before. At first, some dismissed them as cosmic noise, random disturbances from the stars, but a few persistent scientists noticed a pattern, a rhythm that suggested intelligence. The signals repeated in ways that seemed deliberate, almost like someone was trying to communicate across the vast distances of space. The scientists studied the signals day and night. They translated frequencies, analyzed waveforms, and searched for hidden meanings. Slowly, it became clear. The signals were not just noise. They were messages sent from a world in crisis, a civilization calling out for help. The content was difficult to understand fully, but the sense of urgency was unmistakable. Someone, somewhere, was desperate. A sense of responsibility grew among the humans working on the project. Unlike many other civilizations in the galaxy, humans had a history of taking risks, exploring dangerous places and helping those in need, even when it was difficult. The signals spoke to something deep within them, the instinct to act, to reach out, to answer a call when nobody else would. The scientists gathered in their control rooms, discussing the possibilities. "It looks like a world struggling to survive," one said, pointing at the decoded patterns. "Their cities are collapsing. Their resources are running out. If we don't respond, they may not last much longer." Another added, "The environment there is extreme. Nothing like it has ever been recorded in our databases. It's a death world, a place where life itself fights to survive." The term death world did not frighten them. For these humans, danger was a challenge, not a reason to turn away. They began to prepare a response. Small exploratory ships designed for harsh environments were modified for long-distance travel. Supplies, medical equipment, and emergency tools were packed carefully. A team of experienced humans, people who had survived deserts, storms, and frozen wastelands on Earth, was assembled. These humans were tough, resourceful, and willing to risk everything to reach the distant world. Meanwhile, back on the alien planet, hope and skepticism battled in equal measure. The aliens had waited for years, sending call after call into the void. Each time, nothing had come. They were cautious now. Could this new signal be real? Could someone finally be responding? Or would it turn out to be another disappointment? Another cruel twist of fate? Some aliens gathered in the central towers, watching their instruments and monitoring the faint signals. Their hearts beat faster as the patterns repeated, growing stronger and clearer. They could sense intelligence behind the signals. Someone was out there, and unlike previous attempts, this one seemed deliberate. There was structure, precision, and care in every transmission. As the humans worked tirelessly on their preparations, they learned more about the planet they were about to reach. The world was dangerous, with violent storms, unstable terrain, and a fragile atmosphere. Only a team trained to handle extreme conditions could hope to survive long enough to help. They also learned about the aliens themselves, their culture, their history, and the struggles that had brought them to this point. Understanding these details helped them plan not just how to survive there, but how to make a meaningful impact once they arrived. Training was intense. The team practiced navigating dangerous terrain, repairing equipment under harsh conditions, and delivering emergency aid in simulated disasters. Every exercise was designed to prepare them for the worst-case scenario, because failure was not an option. Every human on the team knew that lives depended on their skills, their courage, and their determination. At the same time, the scientists kept communicating with the aliens as best as they could through the signals. Messages were sent carefully, full of questions about their needs and conditions, trying to understand how to help most effectively. Each response from the aliens was precious, a small victory and proof that someone had finally listened. Slowly, Trust began to form across the vast distance. For the aliens, the human interest was both shocking and hopeful. After so many years of silence, the idea that a civilization would risk itself to help them was almost unbelievable. Their fear and suspicion battled with a fragile hope. Could these humans truly be different? Could they really be willing to face the dangers of the death world to offer assistance? As preparations continued, the humans realized the journey itself would be perilous. They would travel across light years of empty space, facing cosmic storms, radiation belts, and unpredictable anomalies. But the team was resolute. They knew that the lives of an entire civilization depended on their success. Every step of the journey was meticulously planned, yet they remained ready to adapt to whatever challenges they might encounter. Back on the alien planet, life continued in its harsh rhythms. Daily survival consumed most of their energy. Water had to be gathered carefully, crops had to be tended under protective coverings, and shelters had to be reinforced constantly. Every day was a fight against the planet itself, and every night brought new fears. Yet the faint signals from humans became a thread of light, a reminder that they were not entirely alone. Children began to ask questions they had never asked before. "Will anyone come?" they whispered to their elders. "Are there really others who care?" The elders answered as best they could, sharing cautious optimism but never making promises. Hope was fragile and disappointment could be devastating. But the possibility that help was on the way began to influence the way they lived, giving them small reasons to continue working, building, and surviving. The humans finally prepared to leave Earth. The ships were stocked, the equipment checked, and the team ready. Every member knew the stakes. They did not see the planet as a death world to fear, but as a challenge to overcome. Every skill they had learned, every training exercise they had endured, was about to be put to the ultimate test. As the ships departed, the humans looked back at their home planet. They knew the journey would be long and dangerous, but they carried with them more than tools and supplies. They carried determination, courage, and a belief in doing what was right, even when it was difficult, even when others had refused. On the alien planet, the waiting became almost unbearable. Every day, the signals from humans were analyzed with painstaking care. Every pattern, every rhythm was studied. The aliens could feel that something was coming, something different from the endless silence that had haunted them for years. And though they did not know exactly when or how, they sensed that the long wait might finally be ending. The bond between the two civilizations was fragile but growing. Across unimaginable distances, trust began to form, built on the shared desire to survive, to help, and to connect. It was a new beginning, fragile yet full of promise. As the alien planet continued its daily struggles, the humans traveled through the stars, facing the void and the unknown. The story of the dying world and the brave humans who chose to answer its call was only beginning. The next chapter would test both civilizations, challenging them in ways they had never imagined. But for now, hope had returned, and for the first time in many years, the aliens dared to believe that they might not be alone after all. The journey through space had begun. The human ships left Earth quietly, gliding past familiar planets and stars that shone like distant lanterns in the blackness. Inside the ships, the team prepared for the long voyage ahead. Each member understood the dangers that lay in the path. Traveling across light years was no simple task. Cosmic storms, radiation fields, and unpredictable gravitational anomalies could strike at any moment. And there would be no help nearby if something went wrong. The crew had trained for months learning to navigate dangerous conditions, repair equipment on the fly, and survive in hostile environments. Every exercise, every simulation, every exhausting training session had been for this moment. Yet nothing could fully prepare them for the reality of traveling so far from home. The vast emptiness of space was overwhelming. Stars flickered in the distance like pinpricks of light, but between them lay endless darkness, a void that seemed to stretch forever. Despite the challenges, the humans were determined. Each day they maintained their routines with careful precision. Machines were checked, systems monitored, and supplies inventoried. Every detail mattered because a small mistake in space could become a catastrophe. But it was not just about technical skills. Each member carried a sense of purpose that kept them going, a commitment to reach the distant world and help the civilization that had sent the call for aid. As the days passed, the team encountered their first real challenge. A sudden surge of cosmic radiation hit the ships unexpectedly, causing alarms to blare and systems to flicker. The crew jumped into action immediately. Engineers worked to shield critical systems, while navigators adjusted the course to minimize exposure. The situation was tense and the minutes felt like hours, but the humans stayed calm, relying on training, experience, and teamwork. Eventually, the radiation passed, leaving the crew shaken but unharmed. "It's a reminder," one of the team members said quietly, "that space isn't forgiving. We have to be ready for anything." The reminder strengthened their resolve. They knew that the world waiting for them was already in crisis. Any delay, any mistake could make the difference between survival and disaster for the aliens. This knowledge made every decision critical, every action important. Meanwhile, back on the alien planet, life continued in its harsh rhythm. Families moved cautiously through their broken cities, always aware of the dangers that surrounded them. Storms could strike without warning, washing away homes or sweeping away the unprepared. Water was scarce and every drop mattered. Food had to be rationed carefully and every day was a struggle to maintain basic survival. Yet even in this extreme environment, hope had begun to grow. The faint signals from the humans were like distant stars, offering a tiny glimmer of light in the endless darkness. The aliens listened to each transmission, analyzed the messages, and responded with their own. Though the distance made communication slow and imperfect, the very act of sending and receiving signals reminded them that they were not entirely alone. As the human ships traveled further, they faced more obstacles. A gravitational anomaly from a massive star forced them to adjust their course, requiring careful calculations and precision piloting. Minor equipment failures challenged their skills, but the team worked together, fixing problems quickly to keep the mission on track. Every small victory reinforced their confidence, while every setback reminded them of the fragility of life in the vast emptiness of space. Inside the ships, the humans shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. They had trained to survive extreme conditions, but no simulation could replace the reality of traveling so far from home, knowing lives depended on their success. The human spirit became their strongest tool, keeping morale high even when fear and uncertainty lurked nearby. During one long shift, the crew gathered to study the latest information from the alien planet. Images, sensor readings, and translated signals were analyzed in detail. The humans learned about the planet's extreme weather, unstable terrain, and fragile ecosystems. They studied the aliens' culture, technology, and survival strategies. Every detail mattered. Understanding the world they were about to enter was crucial, not just for their safety, but for the effectiveness of their mission. Some crew members worried about the unknowns. What if the planet's environment was too hostile even for them? What if the aliens had lost too much? What if they arrived too late? But these doubts were balanced by determination. They knew that hesitation could cost lives. They could not allow fear to stop them from taking action. Courage, resourcefulness, and teamwork were their guides. On the alien planet, the anticipation grew. Though they could not see the humans, the aliens sensed that something was moving closer. Each day they monitored their instruments carefully, watching for changes in the signals. Children asked their parents repeatedly if help would really arrive. The elders reassured them cautiously, reminding them that hope had returned, but that they must continue to prepare for the worst. Every building was reinforced, every water source checked, every garden protected. The aliens knew that survival required constant vigilance, and that even the arrival of help would not eliminate danger entirely. The humans encountered another challenge as they approached the edge of the alien system. Asteroid fields, remnants of a destroyed planet, blocked their path. Navigating through the dense field required precision flying, quick thinking, and calm nerves. A single miscalculation could destroy the ships. The crew worked seamlessly, guiding their vessels through the dangerous maze, relying on skill, intuition, and the trust they had built in each other. After hours of careful maneuvering, they emerged from the asteroid field, exhausted but relieved. The first glimpse of the alien planet appeared in their sensors. It was a harsh, unforgiving world, its surface scarred by storms and erosion. The cities were visible from orbit, but they were broken and fragile. The humans could feel the weight of the mission more strongly than ever. The lives of an entire civilization depended on them, and they were ready to act. Back on the planet, the aliens noticed subtle changes in the signals. The transmissions from the humans had grown stronger, clearer, and more structured. Though they could not see the approaching ships, they felt the presence of someone finally coming to their aid. The hope that had been fragile for so long became stronger, filling hearts with cautious optimism. As the humans prepared to enter orbit, the team conducted final checks. Emergency systems were tested, supplies reviewed, and landing strategies rehearsed. Every detail was critical. The alien world was unpredictable, and the humans knew that success would depend on careful planning, quick thinking, and courage under pressure. Finally, the moment arrived. The ships entered orbit around the alien planet. From their vantage point, the humans could see the full scope of the challenges ahead: harsh terrain, damaged cities, and unstable weather patterns. But they also saw something that gave them hope: signs of life. People were moving on the surface, working to survive, caring for each other and preparing as best they could. The aliens on the ground looked up at the skies, sensing the arrival of the humans. The years of waiting, fear, and despair had led to this moment. Though they had faced constant danger, they had survived long enough to witness the first signs of real help arriving. Hearts raced with anticipation, and even the youngest children felt the importance of what was happening. The humans made their first scans of the planet, communicating carefully with the aliens through signals. Each message was received with wonder and cautious optimism. The connection, though brief and imperfect, was a bridge between two civilizations separated by light years but united by hope. In the quiet of space, the human team prepared for the next phase, landing on the alien world. The most dangerous part of their journey was still ahead. They would face storms, unstable terrain, and an environment designed to challenge survival itself. But they were ready. Every skill they had learned, every challenge they had faced had prepared them for this moment. And on the alien planet, every heart beat a little faster. Years of despair, of unanswered calls and silent nights had brought them to this point. Help was finally here. The long wait was ending. The first contact between the two civilizations, frail yet full of promise, was about to become real. The human ships had entered orbit, and the alien planet sprawled beneath them like a harsh, unpredictable landscape. From above, the humans could see the extent of the damage. Cities were fractured, buildings half collapsed, and the once vibrant landscape scarred by storms and erosion. Rivers had dried in some areas, flooded in others. Yet amid all this devastation, the humans noticed movement. People were still alive, still working, still fighting to survive. That sight filled the team with purpose. They were not arriving too late. The first step was to establish communication. Signals were sent down carefully, each one simple, clear, and reassuring. The humans did not want to overwhelm or frighten the aliens. They introduced themselves as beings from another world who had come to help. At first, the aliens were cautious. Years of abandonment had taught them to be wary. Could these strangers be trusted? Was this some trick? A small group of aliens approached one of the landing zones, instruments raised to monitor the humans. Their movements were careful, tense, but curious. They had waited years for this moment, yet the reality was even more astonishing than they had imagined. The humans were not machines or strangers from a distance. They were real, present, and willing to face the dangers of the death world, to offer help. The humans descended in smaller craft, touching down on the uneven terrain with careful precision. Dust and debris swirled around the landing site, but the team remained focused. Each human moved with purpose, their every action deliberate and cautious. Their goal was simple: to assist the aliens, stabilize the immediate dangers, and provide hope where there had been little for so long. The first meeting between humans and aliens was tense but respectful. The aliens observed the humans closely, noting their gestures, equipment, and expressions. There was a silent question in the air. Can we trust them? The humans answered not with words alone, but with actions. They began distributing clean water, examining the injured, and assessing structural weaknesses in nearby buildings. Their efficiency, calm, and determination spoke volumes. Children peeked from behind walls, watching these strange newcomers with wide eyes. Some hid, unsure whether to believe the stories of hope they had been told. Elders nodded cautiously, impressed by the human skills but still aware of the fragility of their world. For everyone on the planet, the presence of the humans was both exhilarating and frightening. The humans quickly organized teams to address the most urgent needs. Engineers focused on repairing damaged water systems, purifying what remained and creating new supplies from local resources. Medical specialists attended to injuries, illnesses, and malnutrition, often improvising treatments with the limited materials available. Scientists began analyzing the planet's atmosphere, weather patterns, and soil quality to understand how best to support the local population. Despite the chaos, the humans made an effort to communicate and involve the aliens in the process. They asked questions, listened carefully, and encouraged collaboration. This was not a mission to dominate or control. It was a partnership. The aliens were hesitant at first, but gradually, trust began to form. They offered insights into the planet, its challenges, and its hidden resources. They guided the humans through areas that were dangerous or unstable, helping avoid disasters. As the humans and aliens worked together, the atmosphere began to change. Fear and suspicion gave way to cautious optimism. Children joined in small tasks, helping distribute supplies, tending gardens, and learning from the humans. Adults shared knowledge about the planet, pointing out dangers the newcomers might not anticipate. The collaboration became a lifeline, a tangible symbol that the long years of isolation and despair were finally ending. But the planet was still dangerous. A sudden storm swept across one region, toppling weakened structures and threatening lives. The humans responded quickly, organizing rescue teams, reinforcing shelters, and ensuring that everyone was safe. The aliens watched in awe at the calm efficiency of the humans, realizing that these strangers were willing to face the very hazards that had made other civilizations turn away. The first few weeks were intense. Progress was slow but visible. Water supplies improved, food production stabilized, and damaged buildings were reinforced. The humans taught the aliens techniques for long-term survival, ways to manage the unpredictable environment, and strategies to prevent future disasters. The lessons were practical and hands-on, designed for the immediate needs of the population. Amid the hard work, small moments of hope began to emerge. Gardens that had been abandoned for years started to grow again under human guidance. Children laughed as they played safely in protected areas. Families repaired their homes, sometimes with the humans' help, sometimes with new confidence in their own skills. Each small victory became a celebration, a reminder that life could continue even in the harshest conditions. Communication between the humans and aliens deepened. The humans learned about the aliens' history, culture, and resilience. They heard stories of the world before disaster, of music, art, and invention. These stories were bittersweet, highlighting what had been lost but also inspiring hope for the future. The aliens in turn listened to the humans' stories of Earth, of survival against difficult odds, and of the determination to help others even when danger was high. The humans faced their own challenges. The planet's environment was unforgiving and every day brought new dangers. Equipment broke under stress. Weather patterns shifted unpredictably and the physical strain of constant work took its toll. But the humans were prepared to endure hardship. Their training, resilience, and commitment to the mission carried them through the toughest moments. They supported each other, celebrated small successes, and reminded themselves why they had come. As trust grew, collaboration deepened. The humans began training local teams, teaching the aliens how to maintain water purification systems, grow food more efficiently, and repair critical structures. The goal was not just immediate survival, but long-term recovery. Every skill shared was a step toward independence, a way to ensure that the aliens could thrive even after the humans eventually left. One day, as a fierce wind swept across the region, the aliens saw something remarkable. The humans moved confidently through the storm, protecting vulnerable families, securing buildings, and guiding resources to where they were needed most. There was no hesitation, no fear that prevented action. It was a demonstration of courage and determination that inspired the entire community. The aliens began to understand that these visitors were different from other civilizations. They were not here for profit, power, or glory. They were here to help, to protect, and to teach. The experience reshaped the aliens' understanding of the galaxy. They realized that even in a vast and different universe, there were beings willing to care, willing to risk everything to make a difference. As weeks passed, the planet slowly began to stabilize. Water flowed more reliably, food production increased, and homes were safer. The humans continued their work tirelessly, teaching, guiding, and assisting wherever needed. The aliens, once isolated and desperate, began to feel a sense of security they had not known in years. Their hearts, long hardened by fear and disappointment, began to open to hope again. Even the smallest achievements were celebrated. A repaired water pump became a reason for joy. A thriving garden, once thought impossible, was a symbol of perseverance. Children ran freely in safe areas, laughing, playing, and learning from their new friends. Adults smiled more often, sharing knowledge, stories, and the relief of finally having help. Through all of this, the humans and aliens learned from each other. The humans saw courage, resilience, and ingenuity in the face of extreme adversity. The aliens saw compassion, skill, and determination that transcended fear and distance. The collaboration became more than a mission. It became a bridge between two civilizations, a testament to what could be achieved when beings work together for a common good. And in the quiet moments, as the storm winds died down and the stars appeared in the sky, both humans and aliens looked at each other with understanding. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and despair, yet together they were beginning to rebuild a world that had been abandoned. Hope, once fragile, was growing strong. The first contact had not been simple. It had been challenging, tense, and filled with uncertainty. But it had succeeded. The humans had proven their commitment. The aliens had opened their hearts and a new chapter had begun. This was the moment when a dying world was no longer alone, when hope returned, and when the long years of isolation finally met courage, skill, and compassion from across the stars. The story was far from over, but for the first time in many years, the alien planet could breathe easier. Life had not only survived, it had begun to thrive, guided by hands from another world and hearts that refused to give up. The alien planet had changed since the arrival of the humans. The once barren lands now showed signs of life. Crops were growing in protected fields. Water flowed more freely through repaired channels, and damaged homes were rebuilt stronger than before. The air was still harsh and the storms had not disappeared, but the fear that had gripped the population for years had eased. The people had hope again, and that hope was tangible. Humans and aliens worked side by side, each learning from the other. The humans continued teaching techniques to survive and thrive in the extreme conditions, while the aliens shared their knowledge of the land, the weather, and the hidden dangers that the newcomers might not anticipate. Together, they created a system that was stronger than what either could have achieved alone. The collaboration was not just practical. It became a symbol of trust, unity, and shared purpose. Children played freely in areas that had been carefully prepared and protected. Their laughter echoed through the streets, a sound that had been missing for years. Families gathered to celebrate small victories. A garden that had produced its first harvest, a home that had been fully repaired, or a water system that was functioning smoothly. These moments were precious, not just for their immediate benefit, but for the reminder that life could continue, even in the most challenging circumstances. The elders, who had once feared the complete collapse of their civilization, now walked among the people with a quiet pride. They had witnessed the despair, the struggle, and the isolation of their world. Now they saw a community rising from the brink, strengthened by the courage and compassion of beings from another planet. It was a lesson they would not forget. Even in a universe that seemed indifferent, hope could arrive from the most unexpected places. The humans were careful not to impose themselves. They did not take control or demand obedience. Instead, they guided, assisted, and taught. They listened, observed, and adapted. Every decision was made with respect for the aliens' autonomy and culture. This approach strengthened trust, allowing the aliens to regain confidence in their own abilities while benefiting from the knowledge and experience the humans brought. As days turned into weeks, the sense of normalcy began to return. Markets reopened, albeit small and simple, where the aliens traded what little they had and what they could grow. Schools resumed, focusing not just on survival skills but also on history, science, and creativity. Communities celebrated festivals and gatherings, reminding themselves that life was more than just enduring hardship. It was about living fully. Despite challenges, the humans had prepared for a temporary mission, but the impact of their presence was far deeper. They had shown that courage, empathy, and knowledge could cross the vast distances of space to save lives. The aliens, who had once believed they were forgotten, now understood that help could come even from worlds that seemed impossibly far away. The universe, while still vast and often harsh, was not entirely indifferent. Some nights after the work was done, the humans and aliens would gather together under the sky, looking at the stars. The humans spoke of Earth, of its challenges, its triumphs, and the lessons learned from surviving the planet's extremes. The aliens shared stories of their own history, of a world that had once been thriving and of the years of struggle they had endured. In these moments, the distance between planets felt smaller, replaced by shared understanding and connection. The children were particularly inspired by the humans' presence. They asked endless questions, eager to learn everything they could about the galaxy beyond their world. Some dreamed of traveling to other planets. Others imagined creating new technologies that could protect their home from future disasters. The humans encouraged these dreams, teaching them not just survival skills but curiosity, creativity, and courage. Over time, the bond between humans and aliens deepened. It was more than assistance, it became friendship, respect, and mutual admiration. The aliens recognized the bravery of beings who had traveled so far to help them. The humans admired the resilience, ingenuity, and spirit of a people who had survived in one of the harshest environments imaginable. Together, they had accomplished what neither could have done alone. The elders reflected on how close they had come to losing everything. The planet had been on the brink of collapse, and the people had faced despair that seemed unending. Now, thanks to the humans, they had a chance not just to survive, but to rebuild and thrive. It was a reminder that hope, even when fragile, could endure, and that compassion and courage could create change even across the stars. As the recovery continued, the humans began planning for their eventual departure. Though their mission would not last forever, they ensured that the aliens were well prepared to continue rebuilding on their own. They trained more local teams, strengthened infrastructure, and shared knowledge that could sustain the civilization for generations. Every step was designed to leave a lasting impact, ensuring that the lessons and help would not fade when the humans left. When the day finally came for the humans to leave, the aliens gathered to say goodbye. There was no sadness, only gratitude and pride. The bonds that had formed were strong, and the aliens knew that their world was forever changed. They had survived, rebuilt, and learned that even when the galaxy seemed indifferent, courage and compassion could make all the difference. The humans departed, leaving behind a civilization stronger than before. The streets were filled with life. The water systems functioned reliably, and food grew in abundance compared to the desperate years before. The people had regained not just survival but confidence, hope, and a renewed sense of purpose. The planet remained a death world, still harsh and dangerous, but its inhabitants had learned to face it with skill, resilience, and unity. In the days that followed, life returned to a new rhythm. Children attended school, families rebuilt homes, and communities worked together to strengthen the planet against future disasters. The presence of the humans had changed not only the physical landscape, but also the mindset of the people. They had learned that even in the most extreme conditions, survival and growth were possible with courage, collaboration, and hope. The elders often spoke of the humans with reverence. They recounted the stories of arrival, the first contact, and the tireless work that had brought the planet back from the brink. These stories were passed down to the younger generations, teaching lessons about bravery, kindness, and the power of answering a call for help, even when it seemed impossible. For the humans, the mission had been challenging and dangerous, but it had been worth every risk. They had seen the direct impact of their actions, the transformation of a world, and the rekindling of hope in a civilization that had long been abandoned. They had proven that courage, empathy, and determination could bridge even the vast distances of space. The story of the dying planet, the desperate calls for help, and the arrival of Earth's Deathworlders became a legend. Not just a tale of survival, but a story of connection, compassion, and courage. It reminded both humans and aliens that even in a vast and often indifferent universe, hope could travel across the stars and change the course of lives. The alien planet would always remember the arrival of the humans, not just for the help they brought, but for the belief they inspired. Life had returned, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The future was uncertain, as it always would be, but the people knew one thing: they were not alone, and they could face whatever came next with courage and hope. The galaxy, which had ignored the cries for help for so long, had been reminded that even the most desperate voices could reach those willing to act. And in the hearts of the aliens, a lesson remained forever clear: When someone answers your call, no matter how far away they are, it can change everything. And so, the planet endured. The children grew up in a world that was no longer defined by fear. The communities thrived with the knowledge and skills to survive, and the aliens looked to the stars with renewed hope. They remembered the humans not just as visitors, but as saviors, teachers, and friends. The galaxy had turned its back for too long, but Earth's Deathworlders had come, and in doing so, they had restored life, hope, and the belief that no call for help would ever go unanswered again.